Hi, Trish Triumph Sullivan here, and we're going to talk today about lecture 12. This is lecture 12, but we're going to talk about assignment number 4, okay? And so this is ART6 painting, both watercolors and oils, and let's get started right away. So assignment 4, you guys, is about perspective, and we'll talk briefly about perspective and what I'm expecting you guys to do, okay? So for this assignment, I want you guys to paint a building from downtown Salinas, and I want you to find a cool old building to paint. Okay, don't go for. I don't want to see something that just looks like a cracker box with no detail on it. I want you to challenge yourself with this. It's very important that you pick a building, and then you're going to tell me which building it is and show me a photograph of it before you start your painting, okay? So I want to make sure that we're clear on this. I'm going to approve your building that you choose. There's a lot of buildings in downtown Salinas, and if you don't live in Salinas, then you can go to the downtown of the town you live in, whether it's King City, Greenfield, Soledad, Gonzales, or even Chulad, or Watsonville, wherever you live. There's a downtown, and the downtown's going to have some really beautiful old buildings. I want you to choose a building and time of day. So you're going to do first of all, you're going to do a painting of a building, right? Remember, it has to be an old building. And you're going to be using perspective, so I want you to do it kind of from the side, so you have a 2-point perspective. So your angle is going to be slightly from the side, so you have a slight. You're not going to be doing it straight on, okay? So you're not standing in front of the building and just doing a straight on thing. You're going to be to the side a little bit, so you can have that perspective that we're talking about. And I want you to do this either morning or evening. When the sun's low in the sky. Right? I want it low in the sky for a reason. And that is because I want you guys to have some shadows, because this isn't just about perspective, right? It's about making sure you have some light and shadows to paint, right? If it's a cloudy day, I do not want you using that as your template or as your photograph to work from, okay? So you're going to find an old building, hopefully in downtown Salinas, and you're going to do a side view, okay? View from the side. Morning or evening, so the sun is low in the sky, because we want to have some shadows, right? This is important, because you're going to be learning about painting light and shadows. Now, the reason I'm doing this lecture right now, when you've just started maybe, or not even started on your still life yet, is because I want you to be working on 2 paintings at once. This is very important. You want to at least have 2 paintings that you're working on. 3 is even better, because you have to have time for them to dry in between working on them. And so you might sit down for 1, 3, or 4 hour session, and you might work on 3 different paintings as you're waiting for one portion to dry on each one. And that's going to maximize your time that you spend on your painting, because a lot of painting is a hurry up and wait kind of situation while you're waiting for something to dry, and it's taken forever, right? So to combat that, you want to be able to work on more than one image at the same time, more than one thing. So we want to get some shadows, and we definitely want the perspective. Perspective is what we're going for this. So you're going to find an old building, view from the side, I want this to be morning or evening, and the sun's going to be low in the sky, so you have some shadows, okay? And so the first step you're going to do is you're going to take your viewfinder, right? You're going to choose your viewfinder. You're going to take your picture plane, I should say. You're going to choose your viewfinder, and you're going to compose, right? You're going to look at your building. You're going to close one eye. You're going to, hold it up, hold it down, bring it towards you, bring it far away. Figure out what your composition is. Is it going to be better this way, right? Is this going to be a better format for the building, or is it going to be better this way? So you have vertical or horizontal, right? So you want to know what you're going to do, vertical or horizontal, and make your, get your view that you're going to have. All right. Once you've done that, you're going to take your dry erase marker, okay, and you are going to close one eye. Make sure you have your picture plane where you can, you have it where exactly where you want it, and you're going to do your outline of the building, so that as much detail as possible, so that you have something to work with, right? Then you're going to use a toned piece of paper, and you're going to do your fully realized drawing of your building, okay? But before you do that, I want you to take a photograph of the building. You're going to photograph the building. You're going to email it to me. So I want you to make sure that or you can actually turn it in under the assignment, right? So I can see what the building is that you've chosen. And you're going to take that photograph. You can use your cell phone, is fine. And you're going to take that photograph from the angle of view that you're going to be painting from. Same time of day, exact thing. You take your photograph and either send it to me via email or upload it to the assignment number 4 in Canvas, okay? Either one is fine, but I want to see that building, right, before you actually start your painting, right? So first off, here's your steps really quick, and then we'll talk about the perspective, all right? So your steps are: 1, find a building. Right, remember we said low sun, right? Because we want to have shadows. And we want kind of a little bit of a side view, or a little bit from the side, so you're going to see kind of a corner of the building with 2 sides coming down. So you might see it looking kind of like that, right? So there's your building. Right, so maybe we got some windows there. All right, so I want you to see this type of and it doesn't have to be quite that exactly from the corner, but I want a view where you can see the 2-point perspective, okay? So this is 2-point perspective. Two-point perspective. And so you have to do that. That is the assignment, okay? It's for you to do that. So the perspective assignment is for you to paint a building showing perspective. And you're going to do that by doing sighting, okay? And what that means, so you're finding a building. Let me just write these steps down, right? You're going to take a photo. Send to me. Right, then you're going to use your picture plane. Right, and you're going to make a fully realized drawing. And then step 4 is you're going to paint. You're going to paint this. So you're going to create a painting of the building. Now, you're mostly going to be working from your photograph. So that's why it's so important that you take a photograph, okay? But you're also going to have your guideline of your picture plane and your fully realized drawing that you've done, okay? So that's very important that you do those. So you're going to find a building. The time of day is important and the angle of view is important. You're going to take a photo. You're going to send it to me, okay? I don't care if it's on Canvas or on the, on the email. And then you're going to use your picture plane to start a fully realized drawing, right? You're going to have a drawing where you actually finish the whole thing. Then you're going to do the painting, okay? So these are the steps you're going to take to begin with. So let's talk briefly about perspective. There's a lot of information about perspective in the book because this is part of what we talk about in the book as well, and you'll be doing some practice drawings in there. We're coming right up to that, so it'll be time for you to be doing some practice drawings with perspective, and there's quite a bit in the book. I think they have you do a hallway with 1 point perspective. You do a corner of a room, right? So you see the corner of the room from the inside, and then I think there's a 2 point perspective of a building from the side, right? So you kind of get an angle for both sides there. You have this angle of view where you're looking at the building from one corner, so you can see both sides, two sides of the building coming away from you. Okay, so let's talk about perspective really quick, and then you can get started on your painting. Okay, so perspective. There's 3 basic kinds of perspective. There's linear, atmospheric, okay, and intellectual. Let me see if I can write that better. We'll use linear, intellectual, and atmospheric. Not the best. So atmospheric. So linear is the kind that we're pretty much most familiar with. And linear comes in 1, 2, and 3 point perspective. So let's go over this very quickly because this is very important for the success of this. So 1 point perspective, you've got a vanishing point. And one of the first things you do when you're composing is you decide where your horizon line is going to be in your painting, right? So your horizon line, in case you don't know, is your eye level. Okay, horizon line, if you go down low, your horizon line goes down low. You go up high, the horizon line goes up high. It follows your eye level. So we really can't see the horizon. That's an illusion, right? It's an idea. It seems like we might be able to see where sky meets land or sky meets water, but it's really too far away for us to see with our bare eyes, right? It's hundreds of miles, right, to see a horizon. So we can't really see it. So it's kind of an illusion or a construct for us. But one of the first things you want to do in composition is figure out where your horizon line is going to be. So in this case, my horizon line's up here. So I want to show you 1 point perspective. Okay. And that's where you have a vanishing point, right? Vanishing point. And the vanishing point is where your image kind of vanishes, right? So if I was going to say do railroad tracks, right? That would be a 1 point perspective where I see the tracks receding, where near me, right, the railroad ties are fairly far apart, and as you get further away, you'll see that they not only get closer together, pretty soon you can't even see that they're separated. And if you had trees, let's say we had a tree here, as they go away, they would get smaller and smaller and seem like they're closer together, right? So that's 1-point perspective. This is your vanishing point, right? That's where the stuff disappears, okay? 2-point perspective is where you have 2 points on the horizon. So if I were to show you this, here's my horizon line. If I have 2 points on that are my vanishing points, I could have these radiating lines coming out, like kind of to help me. This is, you do not have to do this, but this is a good visualization for you guys, to kind of help me to construct my 2-point perspective. I can draw these lines in that all end in the vanishing point, right? They radiate out from this vanishing point. And then if I use a different color here, you can really see. So if I'm going to show a building from 2-point perspective, right? So let's say a box. We'll just say it's a box. I'm going to use these lines to help me. So here I've got one there and one there. And then if I erase these other lines around him, I could just draw it, right? I'll have it made. There we go. So if I erase these other lines around it, you're going to see this building kind of pop right out, and that's in 2-point perspective, right? Oops, erased too many lines there. Erase the line of the building. There we go. Right? So the vertical lines are always going to be straight up and down in both 2 and 1-point perspective. And your vertical lines are that, right? A horizontal line is this. The horizontal lines are the ones that change. Those are the ones that are at an angle. And when I talk about sighting, I'm talking about looking, closing one eye, right? And looking at what angle that line of the building, like the roof line or the ground line, is going in, and you use that exact angle on your paper. So when you pick up your paper to draw, right, you're going to sight it, like close them wide, and you see the angle of the roof or the ground, either way, of the building. And then that angle literally lays right down on your paper. That's the angle you're going to use. Right? It's very simple, but as with many things, the most simple things we often try to make really hard on ourselves. So that's 2-point perspective, okay? 3-point perspective is rarely used, but it's usually when you have a very low view or a very high view of your subject. So for instance, if I was up high on a building, looking down on another building, right? Like let's say I'm up, 10 stories, and below me is a 2-story or 3-story building. Then I have a perspective, I'm looking down on it, that causes the top of the building to look larger than the bottom of the building, right? It looks smaller as it recedes away from you. So that's 3 points. So if I have my horizon line here, right? And I have another point down here. So this, I'm not only radiating lines from this way, okay? So I'm not only having the radiating lines out from my 2 points like I did on this one, I'm also having radiating lines coming up this way from that 3rd point. Okay, and there's a fancy name for it, and I don't remember it at the moment, but let's show how that might work for a 3-point perspective. So here's my building again, right? Right, so I'm using the lines that I've drawn, both the 2 points and the 3rd point, to make it look as though the building that I've just drawn on this board is viewed from the top, right? So it makes it look like I've got a view, a bird's eye view, right? Of course, the opposite is true with a worm's eye view. If you're laying on the ground looking up at a building, your 3rd point would be up here, right? You'd have radiating lines coming down from this direction. But this really makes it look pretty realistic, right? It looks like you're looking at a building or a box or whatever it may be from the top down. Okay, so that's 3-point perspective. So these are all linear perspective, 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspective. Okay, and they all have a vanishing point, right? So your vanishing points on 2-point. And I want you to remember that oftentimes your vanishing point on one of these is going to be way off of your page, or your vanishing point. So let's say you're doing a 2-point perspective of a building, right? And here's your horizon line. And you want to fill up your whole paper with your building, right? So let's say I have my building here, and that's the corner, and my vanishing point is way over here. It's way off the paper, right, for this 2-point perspective. Right, that's my horizon line would really be down here. I'm sorry. So in that case, so the horizon line is actually right around here, so you can see my points, right? So in this case, if I, whatever I'm drawing is going to go with those lines. So if I'm making windows, right, they're going to kind of go along these vanishing lines. Whoops, I didn't quite do that right. So that it looks like the building is going over here. But I'm not drawing off the page, obviously, right? So when I erase, when I put my walls in, and I erase these lines, and remember, these can be imaginary lines, right? You don't have to draw these vanishing points, which is why I'm talking about using sighting, right? Using your pencil to sight the angle. And so if I were to sight this angle, I close one eye and my pencil is at this angle, and whoops, let me get a sketchbook out here so you get an idea of how this can work. So if I have my sketchbook, and this is a small one, so I wouldn't probably be using this one. Find a page I can actually do, right? So I see that angle. I close one eye, right? That angle is this angle. This angle goes directly down on the paper, right? I draw that angle. Does that make sense? It's very simple, and I think because it's so simple, we try to make it more difficult than it really is. But it's a tried and true. All professional artists use sighting to get their perspective, because our left brain will tell us, it's square, it's a building, it's square, right? You don't need, it doesn't like slope down like that, but it does. And that's the illusion that you need to utilize in order to produce realistic looking buildings. You need to know perspective. Vincent van Gogh said, you need to have it for the least little thing. And he's absolutely right. You need proportion and perspective is very, very important. So this is what I'm looking at. I want you to have like this kind of a view where you're seeing a corner and two sides of the building. Okay, even if you don't see the entire other side, I want you to have a little bit of to the side, so you're not looking straight on at the building. Okay, all right. So that's linear perspective. What about intellectual perspective? Well, let's go over that really quickly as well. So intellectual perspective is what your mind thinks, okay? So let's go over a couple of different ways that our mind sees things, right? Because our brain actually sometimes cheats us, but it also remembers things, especially spatial things, that help us to deal with everyday life. So if we see something like this in real life, which of these would you say is the closest to us? Which of these shapes? Which one is closest? Well, if you said triangle, you'd be right. Which one's furthest away? If you said square, you'd be right. And what's in the middle? It's the circle. Okay. Why is that? Because when we see things that overlap, our brain, which has a lifetime of experience, right? Because it's been with us all our whole lives, our brain can tell you that if something is overlapping another thing, that the other thing is further away, right? It's behind, right? That's intellectual perspective. Our brain is telling us a few things like that. So also that where things are placed on the picture plane, so often our brain will tell us that the thing on the bottom is closest to us, right? Because where it's happening in the composition, our brain will say, oh, this is closer, that's next, and that's furthest away, right? And the third way that we might see this with intellectual perspective, you guys, is size, right? Our brain might tell us the biggest thing is the thing that's closest, right? And the smaller thing is the one that's furthest away. That makes sense to you? Yeah, absolutely. So that's intellectual perspective. So you've got either overlap, the placement, right? Placement on the picture plane, and size. Okay, so that's intellectual perspective. We've got 3 different ways that our brain helps us through our life experience to know where things are in perspective, right? Okay, so that's intellectual. And the final one, you guys, is atmospheric perspective. And atmospheric perspective is actually pretty amazing. So atmospheric. I'm going to rewrite that just because I feel like I can't quite see it. So. Okay, a little squish, but we got it, atmospheric. All right, so atmospheric perspective basically tells us that when things are far away, they look different. So when you look far away at a mountain, like way far away at a mountain, okay, what color is it? Think about it. Are they green? Are they red? No. If you're looking far away at a mountain, way far away in the far distance, the atmosphere interferes and it makes it look kind of blue, like a faded blue, or even a kind of a lavender, like faded, and they're fuzzy looking. Now when you get up close to them, are they really blue? No. Right? Are they really lavender? No. They're whatever color the mountain is. Right? If it's covered with trees, it's going to be green. If it's, black and brown rocks, it's going to look black and brown, right? If it's covered with brown grass, it's going to be brown. But when you look at it from really far away, it looks kind of bluish, like a faded blue, like faded blue jeans, right? So next time you look at the mountains in the Salinas Valley, I want you to look at the color of them. And the reason for that is, so in other words, if you're looking at a picture, like a photograph, and let's say we're in the Salinas Valley and we've got some hills, right? We've got some crops that are going off into the distance, right? And then in the background we've got some mountains, right? The mountains are going to appear blue. Right, they're gonna look bluish, and that's because the atmosphere is interfering. When we look that far away, it changes the color we see, and let me show you why that is. So, if we have the Earth, right? And we have the atmosphere in the Earth. There it is. Surrounds the Earth. And what is it, like a mile or 2 miles, 5 miles out from the Earth? It's not actually that far before the atmosphere is too thin for us to breathe, right? So if I'm standing over here, let me get a different color here. If I'm standing over here, and there's some mountains sticking up on the Earth over here, then when I'm looking at them, right, it's skimming the top of the Earth there, and I'm seeing these mountains through way more atmosphere than I normally would, right? Because they're kind of sticking up above the horizon line. So I'm able to see these mountains, the tips of these mountains, and they're going to appear bluish to me because of the atmosphere. And why is that? Well, that's because our atmosphere is filled with gas, right? There are different kinds of, we can't see the gas, but it's up there. Like oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, helium. There's all kinds of gases that are in our atmosphere that we can't see. And in some cases, there's ozone, right? Ozone is way high up. It doesn't tend to be down where we're at. But it's there in our atmosphere. And so it's filled with all these gases that we don't see the gases, but those gases tend to refract ultraviolet light. So the gases actually refract it, so the light bounces all over inside the atmosphere, right? So it's bouncing, all over, refracted in all different directions, so that when we look up, our sky appears blue. We really can't see ultraviolet light because it's just off of our visible spectrum. But because there's so much of it bouncing around in the atmosphere all over, because our atmosphere tends to refract it, right? When it makes the sky look blue. That's why the oceans look blue, because oceans are filled with water. And what does water do? Water is reflective, and water reflects light. So when you look in a puddle, right, you see your reflection. And when you look in any kind of water, you'll see the reflection of the sky. And the reflection of the sky is what makes the oceans appear blue. Now, is water really blue? No, right? Unless you have Tidy Bowl and you're putting like blue dye in your toilet, water isn't blue, okay? Water is clear, just like our atmosphere is clear. You can't really see any color in water unless it's organisms like algae. Like algae can turn water so it looks green, right? Or there's particulates in it. If the water's brown, you probably don't want to drink it because there's probably some gross stuff in there, right? So atmospheric perspective in painting means that when you're showing something really far away and you want it to look like it's far away, you paint it using this atmospheric perspective that shows a real faded blue or kind of lavender on those mountains, right? So it's really faded. It's not a bright color jumping out at you. It's a faded blue jeans kind of color, right? So real faded. Okay. So those are the 3 types of perspective, and you're going to use linear perspective especially for this particular project, right? So get started on your painting, and good luck. Have some fun.